Hey, everybody, this is Richard Ryerson from Dose of Leadership Podcast, and you're listening to Bob Nolly on Labrador Leadership Podcast.
Live from the RVA, this is the Labrador Leadership Podcast with Dr. Bob Nolly, the program that brings you the leadership skills that can make you the most authentic, approachable leader for the sake of your business, your team, and for you. Now, here's Bob.
Ladies and gentlemen, how are you? Welcome to episode 2 of the Labrador Leadership Podcast. Happy New Year to you. Alex is back with us. Alex, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing, Bob?
Good. Happy New Year to you too.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, there are no big secrets in broadcasting, but when you and I did the introduction show, that was not New Year's, but this is the first time we've done one in the New Year. So how was your New Year? Was it, It
was my first New Year in New York City.
Oh, and you lived to tell the tale. So were you there in Times Square and all of that?
No, I heard Times Square, there wasn't enough porta potties to go around, so I stayed clear of Midtown Manhattan.
I looked for you on TV. I didn't see you. Okay. Yeah, and ours was pretty quiet here as well. We had a little coffee crud going through the house, so we kind of laid low, but we celebrated making it through another year, so it's all good. Did you make any resolutions?
That was the first thing I did. I made resolutions. I want to say on like the 29th or the 30th. And so I set with one big one, and that was just to write every day, whether it was a journal entry or an idea or a joke. I just decided that I wanted to write every day.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's quite a commitment. And you said you made it before the first of the year?
Yeah, I it was kind of an idea that I toyed with, early fall. I was like, I should really start writing more. I haven't been doing it enough. So I kind of put a timeline on it that I would try to have as much content written at the end of 2015. But I kind of delayed my start a little bit. I knew I was going to do it, but I waited until the first.
That's good. It really doesn't make sense to me to go ahead and make a resolution at the stroke of midnight after the big smooch with whoever you're with and and then this year, here's my goal.
Yeah. Champagne-induced goal setting is not the best way to do it. I think most people probably should sit down, earlier in the day on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, that has gotten a lot of people in trouble. A whole lot of people have gotten in trouble that way. The one I thought of for me is I was a Boy Scout here, and I've lived here in Richmond my entire life, as I've said before. And there's one hike I haven't done in decades, and there's this mountain up in the Blue Ridge here in the Appalachians called Old Rag Mountain. And it's thought of as being in part of Shenandoah National Park, but it's actually just outside the park. It's an outlier. But it's quite a great hike, and there are a couple of features of it. You can do it in a day. But one feature is that there's a rock scramble near the park. So you can be walking along rocky trails and hiking comfortably, if not too strenuously. Then all of a sudden you get to this rock scramble, and there are all sorts of tight fits and stairways and climbs and leaps you have to make. Nothing you need ropes and harnesses for, but it takes some work. But then when you get to the top, when you get to the summit, it's a 360 view. So you can stand on the summit and you can look north, south, east, west, all the way around and take some great pictures, and the views are just awesome. And then it's kind of a circuit hike, so you could come off the summit and take a more leisurely walk down. Of course, on the legs, hiking down off the mountain is pretty tough. So that's my goal. I want to do Old Rag again.
I think that's a great goal. I kind of want to join you on that goal. I probably have too many resolutions of my own. But I, lived in Richmond for the past 5 years, and I never went to Old Rag. And, you see the photos and everyone's up on the summit, and it looks really nice. And I've done a lot of hiking, but I haven't done Old Rag yet. But I think that's a great goal. Did you know when you wanted to hike it?
Well,
certainly not in the winter.
No, not in the winter. And I don't think I want to be up there when people are crawling all over the mountain like ants. When the leaves are turning. So I'm thinking maybe in the later part of summer. I certainly have some conditioning work to do. I've got to get some cardio work done and get some leg work done to have a reasonable hope of getting it done. But I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you have 11, well, if you want to do it in the summer, I suppose you have about 7-8 months. But, once you pick
There's
a date,
time.
you'll know you're...
That's right. That's right. So, I hope out of all the people listening, a lot of people have set goals already for the new year, no matter when you're listening to it. And, the sad thing I read was that goals that people make at the new year, 25% of them are dead, not the people, the goals. They've given them up in the first week, 25% in 1 week. So even though if you discard all the resolutions that are kind of flippant and champagne induced or whatever, that's kind of sad. The bigger number is that 60% of them have been broken or missed by the end of January. So there's a way, a resolution is one thing, but when you talk about a goal, that seems something a little bit bigger or heavier. And what I wanted to do today is just talk about the whole concept of goal setting, because people that are listening to us as we launch here now and listen to a couple of episodes and getting to know us a little bit, I just want to talk about the concept today of the SMART goals that will help them. And here's what a SMART goal is. Number one, when you set a goal, the S in SMART stands for specific, exactly what you want to accomplish. So if I said, for example, I want to hike Old Rag Mountain, I could be more specific and say by the end of the year, which I could be in the snow then even, by the end of the year, I want to hike, let's say the circuit hike of Old Rag Mountain, which includes the rock scramble and the summit. So that's specific. That's not saying I'm going to hike Old Rag. I could drive to the parking lot and go a half mile up the slope and turn around and come back and say I've done that. But being a little bit more specific would be useful. Yeah. So you, in the writing, how could you be more specific with that?
Well, I suppose, you have the culmination of I'm going to go to the summit. I'm going to do this full circuit trail, and I'm going to do this. So, when you write, I feel like I write for so many different things. I do like to write nonfiction and fiction, but I end up writing sort of a very scripted style of a press release or things like that. That's most of the writing that I get to do on a day-to-day basis is kind of these proposals. So, I want to do more of the creative writing. So I was hoping, to make a small book or a zine or something by the end of 2015, for 2016 to that was just the only kind of cap I could put on it.
Sure.
You write every day, or you try to culminate enough material produce enough material rather to kind of make your end piece, your cake, if you will.
That's good. That's good. So being specific, the more you're specific, the S in SMART, the more likely you are to hold on to that goal. Let's go to the M. The M says it has to be measurable. Now, I guess for me, hike up the mountain, when you say it's measurable, all the way to the top, that's measurable. Right. And, I know there are people listening. Gee, wouldn't that be nice? There are a lot of people listening that have been to the Alps, where there are mountains of tens of thousands of feet in altitude. And they hike there. This mountain is, I don't think it's 4,000 feet.
It's actually exactly 3,291 feet.
Straight from our research department. Thank you. All right. What did you say, 3,291?
Yeah, 3,291.
Okay, 3,291 feet. So that's not really, that is measurable, but in terms of the goal. But you could write in terms of measurable for you could be 7 days a week or 6 days a week or number of words per day. Yeah,
or even, an amount of, because, to be completely honest, working on it every day is a physical impossibility. So, maybe a kind of a head count, my end count, my word count at the end of the year, if you will.
Okay.
I could put a cap on that. I'm not sure how many words I would need, though.
It'll start to form up and take a life of its own, I bet. When I was writing my dissertation, I had a commitment that I would write 500 words a day at a minimum. And there were days I wrote much more, but there were days when I got hung up with life or doing other things, or, even at the other end of the spectrum when I could have been out on a little bit of out on the town with the guys for a bit. When I got home, I put down 500 words, and they may have been the worst 500 words I put down, but I got them done, and that really helped me drive it forward near the end, because that project is very easy to just come up and stop. Well, not tonight. I'm not feeling it tonight. I'm going to stop. Well, just keep writing 500 words, because once you don't, you will have found a way to not do it.
Yeah, that's actually an amazing amount of dedication to your dissertation.
Well, it has to get done. There's so many people that, have started down the path and are now in that ABD phase where all the work's done. Oh, yeah, except for this part. And it's hard. If it wasn't that hard, everybody would do it. So,
true.
So we've done our SM, specific, measurable. A is actionable. And I think we both covered that, because it means just start with a verb. A good verb, an action verb. And yours, of course, mine would be hike. Sure. Or climb. I wonder if it's better. Hike, climb. And yours would be write. Mm-hmm. Or more. So that's actionable. We can actually see the action and the energy going out there. The R is kind of interesting. So we have specific, measurable, actionable, and now we have to be realistic. So here is the thing about goals. Goals can be something that's just kind of perhaps a bucket list kind of thing, something that's stuck in your craw you want to get done. But the best goals, not the best, the ones that are more beneficial to you are the ones that we often call stretch goals. It causes you to perform or work, whether it be hiking or writing or anything else, at a level at which you have not done before. Mm-hmm. And it has to be attainable, hence the R in realistic, but it's going to cause growth in your life. And that's the big part of it. So if I said, I'm going to get to Europe and climb the Matterhorn, well, yeah, I could get to Europe pretty easily, but that, putting it in the harness and climbing up the Matterhorn, that's just not going to happen.
Right.
That's not realistic for me. But this little 3291 Rocky Mountain here in Virginia, I think is within reach for you. So when you talk about writing, 500 words, it may be unrealistic. I think the days of the week thing you mentioned adds a filter to it. I've got to do it 5 days a week, even 500 words, 5 days a week. I mean, not that you would be the one to judge whether it sounded good to you or not, but as an example, that sounds to be pretty realistic.
Yeah. And even then, even if you schedule it, then you have a date with yourself. I'm not the most, I'm not a very punctual person, so it actually makes me a terribly, unorganized person when it comes to appointments. But if I can make an appointment with myself a couple times a week, even if it's 2 times in one day and, I take 3 days off and that kind of thing, to write 500 words or something like that, I find that to even be more realistic, because then I've put it down. I've put it down in writing, and I'm a manual person, so I'm not typing my goals. I'm actually writing, scrawling them out and checking them off.
That's great. Now, so when you write, do you actually write? Do you put the pen in your hand and write in a nice book or something, or are you at the keyboard? How do you do it?
I go back and forth because I really enjoy handwriting, but for the long hauls, what I do is when I come up with an idea, I keep a tiny little notebook from a company in Richmond. I have one of their little promotional notebooks, and whenever I come up with something, I scrawl it down in there by hand, and then when I go in to elaborate on it, that's when I type it and I put it into a Word document and kind of put it in my files.
Great. That's great. That's good stuff. I have some fountain pens. Talk about a lost art. I have some fountain pens that I just love writing with occasionally. And when I'll write somebody a handwritten note or letter, I just love having them in my hand. It's the heft of them and the glide of the nib over the nice paper just feels good. And if you're a writer at heart, that can really be a fuel for the fire there.
Oh, I have specific ones that I can't write with, the ballpoint. It's got to be a kind of a fine-tipped gel-based ink. I have a whole criteria for pens to.
Sure. That's when you're talking to a real writer. One of the most often used sentences that they use is, "This pen stinks." Into the trash can it goes. Mm-hmm. Okay, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and the last one, the T, here it is, the T, time. It needs to be time bound. You need to say by when you're going to do that. And, this folds right into what we talked about managing commitments when we did episode 0, did our introduction. You need to say when. So I say this year, so maybe I should be more specific about the climb and say December 31st. Maybe to make sure it gets done, I should pull it up and say September 30th or August 31st or something like that.
My vote is September 30th because at this point I have already signed myself on to climb Old Rag with you. And so I'll be too cold if we do.
Wow. Can you imagine if we could get this done? We could do an episode up there. We could broadcast from up there.
Yeah, just strap our laptops in our back. I'll bring the mic.
We just need the recorder and two mics. We'd be good. I think we need some windscreen. Oh my gosh.
Our first video post is a top Old Rag.
Oh, I don't know. When I get to the top, I don't know if I'll be ready for TV quite yet. Jeez, that'll be tough. All right, let's review them. The SMART goals: specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time bound. And what the biggest goals, you and I didn't mention this. It could be, perhaps it's one we just don't want to share with the nation quite yet, is weight loss goals, health goals. Of course, are very common. So people say they want to lose 20 pounds or 30 pounds or 10 pounds. You got to say when, because I'm as guilty as anyone else. I've lost the same 10 pounds 10 times.
Me too.
And so that's tough. So lose 20, you lose 10 pounds for good by some certain date. The date needs to be there. So I guess the hike that now is just taking on a life of its own. Gee, how would you use time for writing? I mean, is 5 days a week, does that count, or by a certain date you're going to complete a project? Or
I've kind of gone back and forth on this because I do think that putting a timeline on December 31st, who finishes anything in between the week of Christmas and New Year's Eve?
Sure, absolutely.
So I have to sit there and think of it. Maybe I should say December 1st, because the holidays come around and your goals get bogged down, and I think that's why everyone on the first of the year are like, all right, back to it, because I slacked off for the past month between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve. But so I do think that if I can schedule them into my agenda, if I can say, okay, well, this day of the week, I'm going to do a podcast from 7 to 8 p.m. or 8 to 9 p.m. And then I'll sit down and I'll write from 9 to 10 p.m. If I set dates with myself, I actually think that, the whole SMART method would go a little bit more smoothly rather than me saying every day, because every day just in this city, it takes so long to get everywhere. I don't have the spare hour sometimes, that'll go to my commute instead of writing.
Yeah, that's a really great point. When you mentioned nothing gets done in between Christmas Day and New Year's Day,
that might be a personal problem for me.
No, I think the rest of the world's right there with you.
I turn into a slug.
It's a point we can make for everybody to encourage them. When people are self-employed or work for themselves, entrepreneurs everywhere, managing your customers' expectations for that period of time that we call the holidays, and not just Christmas to New Year's, but Thanksgiving to New Year's. Yeah. I can't encourage people enough to just start conversations with key customers about commitments as early as November, saying we are going to be taking some time off between December 10th or the 15th or the 25th till the end of the year. We have this on the board to complete for you, and they'll be completed by these dates. Is there anything else you want to make us aware of? And, just have that conversation to make them aware that,
the work parties, the holidays, all those times not spent working, it does affect, especially, a client to a consultant relationship or something like that. I mean, you put these timelines. I had the same problem actually this year. We said January 1st, we'll launch this website. And of course, the surgeon whose website it is, he goes out of town for a week. And then somebody else in the office goes out of town for 2 weeks. Then the web designer goes out of town for 3 days. And it all it kind of just snowballs, and you realize that these timelines that you make, and especially the lofty timelines like that, like it doesn't, the surgeon knows, oh, I went out of town, so this got pushed back a little bit because we couldn't get the things that we needed from him, and that kind of thing. So and it's okay, you can kind of work through that and say, hey, we could make this 10 times better if we spent a couple more weeks on it instead of rushing it out on January 1st, which is sort of how I feel about, my own goals with, if I say December 31st, then, and then I rush through it, then I really did a disservice to myself and the project.
Yeah, I fully understand. And that's a great point. And out there in the customer world, there's always somebody that's going to chase you down and go, that has something they're on the hook for the first of the year.
Right.
And, it's a tough thing to deal with, but, hopefully we'll prepare folks to have those difficult conversations over the days here. That sounds good.
Maybe November 31st is the better end date on things.
Yeah. So here are some points to make about these. Now, we know how to form these goals: specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound. But here's one thing I'd recommend to everybody. Whether you use a pencil, a number 2 cedar pencil, or a nice fountain pen, write them down. Write them down on someplace special. Don't write them down on the back of a receipt. Don't write them down on write them down in a nice book, the book you keep, where it's a nice little moleskine. Do you know how to pronounce that word? Am I saying that right? Moleskine?
I've always called them moleskin, but I'm from North Carolina, so I never know if I'm saying anything correctly.
We're learning your story chapter by chapter as we go through this. This is great. Yeah, I've said moleskin as well. And actually, maybe I can link this up. There's a video on YouTube just laughing at the 200 ways you could pronounce that. But anyway, everybody has their own style, whether hardback or not, lined or not, and just everybody seems to have one the right size, the color they like. And that's one for me, and that's where my goal. So write them down. When you write them down, the power that comes to you from actually committing it to paper is a big deal. And the fact that it allows you to review them. You can review them during the year. Don't look at them every day. But do look at them, monthly perhaps? Or yes, monthly is what I do, and just go, how is this goal going? So for example, if I'm trying to get this mountain climbed and I'm saying, okay, I've got some cardio work I need to get done. I got to get my legs in shape. At the end of January, I'm going to go, okay, how many times you've been in the gym in January? And that number is going to either be on track, or I'm going to go, I've not done that yet. So then I can consciously make decisions to get more trips in there. In your case, if you have not been writing 5 days a week or 100 words, you look at wherever you write and you go, it's not there yet.
Right.
And so you can review them. And, here's Michael Hyatt has done some great work on goals. He has a whole program on goal setting. And he reminds folks when you get to the middle of the year and go, well, that was a bust, you just abandon it. Don't give up on it. It was important to you in January. It's probably as important to you now. Find a way to get it done. And in the business world, he tells the story of a gentleman who had a budget to hit a sales budget on a division, and he was in big trouble at mid-year and was ready to throw his hands up and go no, but he ended up outperforming everybody the rest of the year and hitting his goal and surpassing it. So that happens. It just needs your focus and your attention to get it done. And actually, thank you very much for sharing the writing goal. I don't know if I shared, too much about climbing this little hill here, but when you do talk about your goals, I encourage you to hold them close to the vest. Some are very personal.
Close to the vest.
Yeah, because remember now, you and I have talked about one each here, and it's certainly appropriate to have more than one. It's wrong to have too many. That's a big mistake. It's wrong to have too many. But we can have several, like in the fields of your faith, and the fields of your relationship goals for the year, your personal fitness, a bunch of them. But just keep them in that book where you write them down.
Right.
And share them, I think, pretty selectively. We should do this. Everybody that's committed, even when you're listening to this now, if you're not listening to this episode until May, then you've missed a lot already. Please don't be late again. If you're not listening to this episode till May, set a goal. And even if you set your goals now, email them to us. And we're not going to read them. I don't mean we're not going to read them on the air. We're not going to read them at all. Send your goal to bob@labradorleadership.com, and I'm not going to open it. Just put in the line, this is my goal, in the subject line. And what I'll do is in 6 months, I'm going to send it back to you. And that'll be a nice little trigger for you to stop and consider just how well it's going. And I will not, I'm certainly available to work on your goals with you, but I don't want to tell you that I'm going to read your goal. I'm just going to pop it open and send it right back to you 6 months later. So that's the least I can do. I've done that in classes I've taught before. It's been very effective. I've heard back from folks.
I'm going to be the first person that sends you my goals.
Well, okay, and I promise I'm not going to read them. I'm not going to read them.
You already sort of helped me through my goals on a weekly basis just by kind of discussing, these ideas with me. So if you need one to read, if you need to peek at one, I encourage you, please.
I never do it. I won't betray the trust. Can't do it. So, folks, remember to smart goals. Remember to write them down. Don't make them too many. Make them specific. Make at least some of them stretch goals for you. Give yourself an opportunity to grow. Make them something that's really important to you. Make them something that's compelling. Make them something that on the other end of it, you'll be darn proud of, like I will when I'm standing on top of that mountain. And don't make them all in your comfort zone. They'll be really productive if they fit to something next. If you ask yourself, when I get this done, then next I can do this. And then all of a sudden you're pushing your life forward. How does it sound, Alex?
That sounds great, but I do have one concern.
Sure.
What should the subject be of the email so that you know not to read them for our listeners?
Just say, this is my goal.
Okay.
Just say anything about this is my goal. Don't read it. Just
so
say anything.
Is a do not read zone.
Yeah, and I won't open it. And any of you that are, get read receipts open, I won't open it. But in 6 months, I want to turn it around and just send the reply right back to you. I'd be glad to do it. And I hope it serves you well. Alex, thank you very much for today.
Well, thank you, Bob. It was a pleasure to talk with you.
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to episode 2 of the Labrador Leadership Podcast. Please check us out on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Please subscribe, and please, if you can, give us a 5-star review and give us a rating there, because it's important that we get iTunes to keep us in front of people, because leadership conversation that helps everybody in their jobs and their lives needs to move forward. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Labrador Leadership Podcast. For the sake of all the special people in your life that deserve you to be the best leader you can be. Connect with us on our website at labradorleadership.com, on Facebook at Labrador Leadership, and on Twitter at Lab Leadership. Now, here's a final thought from Bob.
Hope all your goals are smart ones. Email them back to me at bob@labradorleadership.com, and I'll get them back to you later in the year. Next time on the Labrador Leadership Podcast, you'll hear from a leader that takes his giving back to the community very seriously. Until then, we'll see you next time.